Please, Mom, just sign here. Vanessa's voice was as sweet and as persuasive as it had been when she was a little girl, begging me for candy money. But now, at 35, her hand pressed mine down on a pen as her husband, Sebastian, held my arm with a grip that ached to my bones. We were in a bank, surrounded by people going about their normal business, oblivious to the drama unfolding at our table. It's just routine, Mom. A small transfer to get some paperwork sorted out. But I knew she was lying. I had seen the documents. It wasn't a small transfer. It was everything. My $50,000 in savings. All that was left after my husband Peter passed away 3 years ago. The bank's air conditioning hummed over our heads, but I felt a hot, sticky wave of panic. The fluorescent lights hurt my eyes, and the sound of the cash counting machines hammered in my temples. Vanessa smiled for the security cameras, as if we were a normal family doing normal business. Sebastian smiled too, but his fingers remained clamped on my arm like a vice. "Come on, Olivia," he whispered in my ear. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." His breath smelled of cigarettes and cold coffee. "Think of your granddaughter, Caroline. Think of everything we've done for you, everything they had done for me." The irony burned in my throat. I was the one who had paid for Vanessa's college. I was the one who had given her the down payment for her house. I was the one who had covered Sebastian's debts when he lost his job last year. $20,000 they never paid back. And now they were here trying to steal the last thing I had, my widow's pension, the money Peter and I had saved over 46 years of marriage. My hands trembled as I held the pen. The ink looked so black, so final on the white paper. One signature, and it would all be over. One signature, and I would be left with nothing. Vanessa leaned in closer, her sweet perfume mixing wasan, the anxious scent on my skin. "Mom, trust me, it's for your own good. You can't manage this much money at your age." Her words were poisoned honey, each syllable calculated to disarm me. I looked around desperately. The young teller watched us from his window, but he seemed busy with other customers. An older woman waited in line, flipping through an insurance brochure. A man in a suit checked his phone. No one noticed what was happening. No one saw that I was being robbed in broad daylight in public with smiles and affectionate words. Sebastian squeezed my arm tighter, and a choked sob escaped my throat. "Shut up," he muttered through a smile. "We don't want to make a scene, do we?" His eyes were cold as ice, and for the first time, I realized this man was capable of anything. Vanessa, my own daughter, the child I had breastfed and raised, sat there and watched her husband hurt me without doing a thing to stop him. The wall clock read 3:15 in the afternoon, a regular Tuesday that had become the worst nightmare of my life. I remembered how I had gotten here. Vanessa had called me that morning, her voice filled with fake urgency. "Mom, we need to go to the bank. There are some papers you have to sign. It's important." She hadn't given me any details. She never gave me details, just orders disguised as pleas. The bank manager, an older man named Mr. Thompson, approached our table with a professional smile. "Everything all right here? Can I help with anything?" His presence gave me a spark of hope. This was my moment, my only chance. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would break through my chest. I quickly scribbled on a piece of paper on the table. "Help. I'm being coerced. I don't want to sign." I folded the note and slid it to him when Vanessa and Sebastian were distracted looking at the documents. Mr. Thompson discreetly opened the note, and I saw his eyes widen. His professional expression transformed into one of controlled alarm. For a moment that felt like an eternity. Our eyes met, and in that instant, I knew he understood perfectly. Without saying a word, he discreetly pressed a button under his desk, the silent alarm. My heart calmed for the first time all afternoon. Someone was going to help me, but to understand how I had reached this moment, I need to tell you the full story. I need you to understand who I was before I became this desperate woman in a bank, silently begging for help. My name is Olivia Anderson. I am 69 years old, and all my life, I was the woman who always said yes, the woman who always gave, always helped, and always sacrificed for her family, especially for Vanessa. I remember the day she was born as if it were yesterday. It was a spring morning, and after 12 hours of labor, she finally came into the world, small, perfect, with the green eyes she inherited from her father. I held her in my arms and promised her she would never lack for anything, that she would always have my love, my support, and my protection. I kept that promise for 35 years, but now I realize I may have kept it too well. When Vanessa was 5, her father and I worked 2 jobs each to buy her the pink bicycle she wanted so badly for her birthday. It cost $200, a fortune for us back then, but it was worth it to see her smile. When she turned 15, she wanted to go to a summer camp that cost $1,500. I sold my grandmother's jewelry to pay for it. When she graduated from high school, she insisted on going to a private university. "Mom, it's my dream," she'd say with tears in her eyes. "I can't go to a state school. What will my friends think? The tuition was $40,000 a year, $40,000 we didn't have. Her father and I took out a loan using our house as collateral. I worked exto. Raw shifts at the hospital cafeteria for 4 years, cleaning tables late into the night, my feet swollen and my back aching, all so Vanessa could have her college degree. She graduated with honors in business administration, and I cried with pride at the ceremony. I thought I could finally rest, that I had fulfilled my duty as a mother, but Vanessa had other plans. At 25, she met Sebastian at a dive bar. He was handsome. I couldn't deny that. But there was something in his eyes I didn't like. A coldness, a calculation that put me on edge. When he introduced himself, the first thing he did was ask if the house was paid off. Not, "It's nice to meet you, ma'am." No, just a question about money. I should have seen that as a red flag. Their wedding cost $50,000. "Mom, I'm only getting married once," Vanessa pleaded. "I want it to be perfect." I wanted to object, to tell her we didn't have that kind of money, that her father had just been diagnosed with diabetes and we needed to save for his medication. But I saw her so happy, so excited that I couldn't say no. We took out another loan. The wedding was beautiful, I have to admit. Vanessa looked radiant in her white lace dress, like a storybook princess. Sebastian smiled, but I noticed his eyes were constantly scanning the wealthier guests, calculating and evaluating. After their honeymoon in Europe, another $5,000 expense we had to cover because they couldn't possibly go without a honeymoon. Vanessa and Sebastian moved into a small apartment. For 6 months I thought they had finally grown up, that they would stand on their own 2 feet. But then the call started. "Mom, the refrigerator broke. Mom, the car needs repairs. Mom, Sebastian lost his job and we can't pay rent." It was always an emergency, always urgent. And I always said yes. $500 here, 1,000 zeros in there. Small amounts that, when added up, represented my financial peace of mind. 2 years into their marriage, Vanessa announced they wanted to buy a house. "It's an investment, Mom. A step toward the future." The house cost $200,000, and they needed $40,000 for the down payment. They had no savings, of course. Their credit was bad, of course. "Could you help us, Mom? Just with the down payment, I promise we'll pay you back every penny." That was the biggest promise Vanessa ever made me. And also the biggest lie. I withdrew $40,000 from the retirement fund I had been building for 20 years. Every dollar represented extra hours worked, meals I didn't buy, clothes I didn't allow myself, vacations I never took, but I gave it to them. I sat in the bank that day signing the early withdrawal papers with trembling hands as the bank officer explained the penalties I'd have to pay. A 10% penalty, $4,000 I'd lose just for taking out my own money early. "Are you sure about this, ma'am?" the employee asked with genuine concern. "Once you withdraw these funds, there's no turning back." I told him I was sure. It was for my daughter. It was for her future. It was for giving her the stability I never had. I signed the papers and walked to Vanessa's house with the check in my hand, feeling like a hero. I was going to save the day. I was going to make my daughter's American dream possible. Vanessa cried when I handed her the check. Tears of happiness, I thought. "You're the best mom in the world," she said, hugging me tight. "I don't know how to thank you for this. I promise, Mom. Maze. I'll pay you back every last cent with interest. Sebastian seemed emotional too, though his hug felt cold and calculated. Thanks, Ma, he said. This means a lot to us. They moved into the house 3 months later. It was beautiful, I have to admit. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, a large backyard with space for a pool. Vanessa invited me to the housewarming, and I walked through every room with pride. My sacrifice had been worth it. My daughter had her own home, but the calls didn't stop. If anything, they became more frequent. Mom, we need furniture for the house. We can't live on the floor. $10,000 for a new living room set. Mom, the house needs a new fence. The neighbors are complaining. $3,000 for a wooden fence. Mom, we want to renovate the kitchen. It's so old and the stove doesn't work well. $8,000 for new appliances. Every time I hesitated, every time I mentioned that I had expenses too, that money didn't grow on trees, Vanessa knew exactly which buttons to push. Mom, I thought you'd be happy to see us doing well. I thought you'd want your granddaughter to grow up in a nice house. And so Caroline, my 8-year-old granddaughter, the light of my eyes, became the most powerful argument in Vanessa's manipulative arsenal. Caroline had been born when Vanessa was 27. And from the moment I saw her, I knew she was different. She had her grandfather's curious eyes and a smile that could melt the hardest heart. But more than that, she had something her mother had lost somewhere along the way. Genuine kindness. When Caroline visited me, she would bring me drawings she had made at school, little crayon artworks where I was a giant grandma with huge arms, always smiling. I made you big because your love is big, Grandma, she would explain in her sweet little voice. It was impossible to say no to anything that was for Caroline. Ballet classes, $200 a month. Piano lessons, $300 a month. Summer camp, $2,500. Special clothes for ballet recital, $500 per outfit. Caroline has talent, Mom. We can't let her potential go to waste for lack of money. Meanwhile, my own financial situation was deteriorating. Peter had developed complications from his diabetes. His medications cost $400 a month, and insurance only covered a portion. He needed special injections, regular visits to the specialist, and a strict diet that required more expensive foods. I worked double shifts at the hospital. I would come home with my feet bleeding inside my shoes, only to cook, clean, and care for my husband. Why don't you ask Vanessa for help? My sister Clara suggested during one of her visits. You've spent over $100,000 on her in the last 5 years. Surely she can help with some of the medical expenses. But I couldn't ask my daughter for money. It was my job to care for my family, not the other way around. It was my responsibility to be strong, to be the pillar that held everyone up. Peter passed away early one Tuesday morning, 3 years after his diagnosis. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath, and I swear I felt half of my soul leave with him. We had been married for 46 years. He was my partner, my best friend, my accomplice in all the difficult decisions about Vanessa. After his funeral, I sat alone in our empty house and realized I was completely broke. The medical expenses, combined with everything I had given Vanessa, had drained our savings. Peter's life insurance gave me $50,000. It was all I had left to live on for the rest of my days. I deposited it into a savings account and promised myself I would be more careful. I was going to make that money last. I was going to learn to say no. But Vanessa had other plans. 2 months after the funeral, Sebastian lost his job at a construction company. It was his racist boss's fault, Vanessa explained, crying on the phone. He fired him for no reason. Now we can't pay the mortgage. Mom, they're going to foreclose on the house. Caroline will have to change schools. She'll lose all her friends. They asked me for $20,000 just to stay afloat until Sebastian found another job. 6 months max. We'll pay you back with interest, I promise. It was almost half of what I had left, but the thought of Caroline losing her home broke my heart. I gave them the money again. Sebastian found a job 3 months later, but the money never came back. When I asked about it, there was always an excuse. We're paying off old debts, Mom. We had unexpected expenses with the car. Caroline needed to go to the dentist, and insurance didn't cover everything. And now here I was in this bank, watching them try to steal the last $30,000 I had left. My daughter, the child I had raised with so much love, was sitting next to her abusive husband, smiling for the cameras as they planned to leave me in absolute poverty. Mr. Thompson returned to our table, accompanied by 2 security guards who tried to look casual, but I could see the tension in their posture. Vanessa and Sebastian hadn't noticed anything yet. They were too focused on the papers, reviewing the numbers over and over like vultures, calculating their spoils. "Excuse me," Mr. Thompson said in a calm but firm voice. "I need to review some details of this transaction before we proceed." Sebastian looked up, and for the first time I saw a flicker of nervousness in his eyes. "What kind of details?" "Everything's in order. Mrs. Anderson wants to transfer the money to her daughter's account. It's a family decision." His hand was still squeezing my arm, but he was doing it more discreetly now, aware that other eyes were watching. "I understand," Mr. Thompson replied, "but bank protocol requires me to verify that all parties involved are acting voluntarily and without external pressure." His words were like a bolt of lightning cutting through the storm of my desperation. He looked directly into my eyes. "Mrs. Anderson, would you mind accompanying me to my office for a private verification? It's standard procedure for transactions of this magnitude." Vanessa immediately tensed. "That's not necessary, sir. My mother has already decided, haven't you, Mom?" Her smile had become forced, artificial, like a mask that was cracking. "We can do everything right here. We don't want to cause you any trouble." But Mr. Thompson was already standing, extending his hand to me. "It's bank policy, ma'am. There are no exceptions." The guards positioned themselves discreetly near our table. "It will only take a few minutes." I stood up, my legs trembling, and for the first time all afternoon, Sebastian had to release my arm. Vanessa grabbed my other hand. "Mom, don't make this difficult. Just sign the papers and let's go home. Caroline is waiting for us." She used my granddaughter's name as if it were a master key that would unlock all the doors of my resistance. "I'll be right back," I murmured, not daring to look her in the eyes. I knew if I saw her face, if I saw that innocent little girl expression she had perfected over the years, I might waver. I might give in one more time. Mr. Thompson's office was small but cozy, with pictures of his family on his desk and a little cactus in the window. He sat across from me and closed the door. "Mrs. Anderson," he said gently, "tell me what's really going on." And then, like a dam that finally breaks, it all came out. I told him about the years of manipulation, about the money I had given without getting anything back, about the broken promises, and the lies wrapped in pretty paper. I told him how Sebastian had hurt my arm, how Vanessa had used Caroline's name to emotionally blackmail me. I explained that those $30,000 were all I had left to live on, that without them I would end up on the streets. Mr. Thompson listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, taking notes in a notebook. When I finished my story, he sighed deeply. "Ma'am, what you're describing is financial coercion and in some cases elder abuse. What your daughter and son-in-law are doing is illegal." Illegal. The word echoed in my head. All these years I had thought it was my duty, my responsibility as a mother to give until it hurt. It had never occurred to me that what Vanessa was doing could have a legal name, that it could be a crime. "What can I do?" I asked, my voice breaking. "She's my daughter. I don't want to get her in trouble, but I can't go on like this. I don't have anything left to give." Mr. Thompson leaned forward. "First, we're going to cancel this transaction. Second, I'm going to document everything you've told me. Third, I'm going to give you information on legal and protective resources for seniors." He paused. "But ma'am, the most important decision is yours to make. Are you ready to say no? Are you ready to set boundaries, even if it means your daughter gets angry?" That question hit me like a punch to the gut. Was I ready? For 69 years, my identity had been built around being the woman who always said yes, the woman who always gave, the woman who sacrificed for others. If I stopped being that person, who would I be? I thought of Peter, of how he had worked until the day he died to support our family. I thought of the times I had eaten beans for weeks so I could pay for Vanessa's private school. I thought of all the nights I had stayed awake calculating expenses, clipping coupons, looking for ways to stretch every dollar. And then I thought of Caroline, my 8-year-old granddaughter, who was growing up watching her mother manipulate her grandmother. What kind of lessons was she learning? That love could be bought with money, that it was okay to hurt those who love you if you get what you want, that older people were resources to be exploited until they were exhausted. Yes, I said finally, and my voice sounded stronger than I had expected. I'm ready. Mr. Thompson smiled and began to write. All right, we're going to start by putting an alert on all your accounts. No one will be able to make transactions without your physical presence and an additional identity verification. I'm also going to give you the number for a hotline to report elder abuse. As he worked, I looked out his office. On a window, I could see Vanessa and Sebastian in the waiting area. She was pacing back and forth, talking on the phone with agitated gestures. He remained seated, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he was drumming his fingers on the table. They knew something had gone wrong. They knew their plan was falling apart. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about disappointing them. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: control, power, the ability to make my own decisions without someone else telling me what to do or how to feel about it. Mr. Thompson finished writing and handed me several papers. This is a copy of our incident report. This is the number for the helpline. And this, he handed me a small card, is my direct extension. If they pressure or threaten you again, call me immediately. I took the papers with hands that no longer trembled. What do I do now? How do I explain to them that I'm not going to sign? Tell them the truth, Mr. Thompson replied, that you've decided to keep your money for your own living expenses. You don't have to justify anything else. It's your money, ma'am. You worked for it, you saved it, and you have every right to keep it for yourself. I took a deep breath. It was time to face my daughter. It was time to become a person who could say no. It was time to start living for myself, even if it meant breaking a lifelong pattern. We walked out of the office together. Vanessa immediately approached, her face a mix of anxiety and contained anger. What took so long, Mom? We're going to be late. I looked at my daughter, this 35-year-old woman who had built her entire life on my inability to deny her anything. And for the first time in decades, I said the words that would change everything. I'm not going to sign Vanessa. I'm not transferring my money. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa looked at me as if I had just slapped her, her green eyes shining with a mix of shock and fury I had never seen before. Sebastian got up from his chair so abruptly he almost knocked it over, his fists clenched at his sides. What do you mean you're not going to sign? Vanessa asked in a trembling voice, trying to maintain a fake smile for the bank cameras. Mom, we already talked about this. It's just a temporary transfer. It's not temporary, Vanessa, I replied in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. It was firm, decisive, like that of a woman who had finally found her backbone after years of letting others bend it to their will. And it's not a transfer. It's my retirement money, and I'm keeping it. Sebastian took a step closer, but the security guards immediately moved as well, positioning themselves between us. Olivia, he said in that soft voice he used when he wanted to manipulate me. Don't be ridiculous. What are you going to do with all that money? You don't have any big expenses. We can invest it better. Make it grow for the whole family. For the whole family, I repeated, and a bitter laugh escaped my throat. Like when you invested the $40,000 for your house down payment, or when you invested the $20,000 I gave you when you lost your job. Tell me, Sebastian, how much of that have you paid back? I saw his mask of fake concern crack. His eyes hardened, revealing the calculating coldness that had always been there, but that I had been too blind to see. Those were gifts, he muttered between gritted teeth. You said they were gifts. I never said that, I retorted, and the words came out of me like boiling water, finally finding a crack in the pot. You promised you would pay me back. You promised it was temporary. You promised a lot of things you never fulfilled." Vanessa started to cry, but these weren't the genuine tears of pain I had seen when she was a child and scraped her knee. These were calculated tears, performance tears, tears designed to break my resolve. "Mom, I can't believe you're doing this to me. After everything we've shared, after all the love we've given each other. Love." The words shot out of my mouth like a bullet. "You call threatening me love. You call it love when your husband hurts my arm. You call it love when you trick me into coming here to steal everything I have." People in the bank started to turn their heads. An older woman waiting in line watched us with concern. A young man in a suit had stopped checking his phone and was staring openly. Vanessa realized the attention we were attracting and lowered her voice, but the intensity of her desperation only increased. "Okay," she whispered, wiping away her tears with the back of her hand. "Don't transfer everything. Just half. $10,000 is all we need to get out of this jam." "What jam, Vanessa?" I asked, and I could see the question took her by surprise. "Sebastian has a job. You have a house. What exactly is the emergency that requires my retirement money?" She was silent for a moment, and in that silence I saw the truth I had been avoiding for years. There was no emergency, no real crisis. There were just two adults who had built their lifestyle around my inability to say no. They had spent more than they earned because they knew Mom would always be there to make up the difference. "Vanessa," I continued, "you are 35 years old. Your husband is 38. You both have college degrees that I paid for. You both have jobs. It's time for you to learn to live on your own income." "What about Caroline?" Sebastian asked, playing his strongest card. "What about your granddaughter? Are you going to let her suffer because her grandmother became selfish?" That word selfish hit me like a slap. All my life I had feared being selfish. I had sacrificed my wants, my needs, my dreams. Also, I wouldn't be selfish. But now, standing in that bank with my last $30,000 about to be stolen, I realized something fundamental. It wasn't selfish to take care of myself. It was survival. "Caroline is not going to suffer," I said firmly. "You can continue to provide for her with your own income, just like millions of responsible parents do all over the world. What you can't do is use your children as an excuse for your poor financial decisions. You can't use her as a tool of manipulation to hurt and rob your own mother." A few days later, a social worker named Susan came to my house. Mr. Thompson had called the authorities. She listened carefully to my story, nodding as she took notes. She explained the legal process and the resources available to me. She also explained that since I had given them money in the past, it would be difficult to recover it, but that from now on I was protected. Protected. I said the word out loud. I hadn't felt protected in a long, long time. I was going to have to decide if I wanted to file a formal complaint against my own daughter. After Susan left, I sat in my rocking chair and I cried. But these weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of relief. Tears of a woman who had finally found her voice and her dignity. I knew the road ahead would be difficult. Vanessa wasn't going to give up easily. She had already called and sent me dozens of furious text messages. "How could you do this to me, Mom? We're going to lose the house. We're going to lose everything." But for the first time, her words had no power over me. I wasn't the woman who was going to say yes anymore. I was the woman who had learned to say no. A week later, I received an anonymous card in the mail with a single sentence written on it. "I'm so sorry, Grandma." It was Caroline's handwriting. Her love had not been bought. Her loyalty had not been manipulated. In that moment, I knew I had done the right thing, not just for myself, but for her. A few months later, I sold my house. It was too big for one person, and it held too many memories of my marriage to Peter and of the times when I was being manipulated by my daughter and son-in-law. I used the money to buy a small cottage on the outskirts of the city. I planted a garden with flowers and herbs. I bought a small dog named Buster. I joined a book club at the local library and a volunteer group that helps other seniors. I was finally living for myself. I still saw Caroline. My new house was just a few blocks from her best friend's house, and she would often ride her bicycle over to visit me. We wouldn't tell Vanessa about it. It was our little secret. My little act of rebellion. The first time she came to my new house, she brought me a drawing. It was a picture of me, with a huge smile on my face, surrounded by flowers, and with a dog by my feet. It was signed, "Your happy grandma's house, with love, Caroline." And under the drawing she had written something else. "I'm proud of you, Grandma. I'm going to be brave, just like you when I grow up." A few months later, I received a phone call from Vanessa. Her voice was cold and distant. She told me that Sebastian had left her, that she was going to have to sell the house because she couldn't afford the mortgage alone, and that she was going to move into a cheaper apartment. "I hope you're happy, Mom," she said. "You're all alone now." "I'm not alone, Vanessa," I replied, and for the first time I felt a deep sense of peace. I have my garden, my dog, my friends, and my memories. I'm not alone. I'm free. And in that moment I realized that I had finally gotten something back. Not the money I had lost, not the years I had sacrificed, but something much more valuable: my life, my voice, my dignity. The next day, I had lunch with my sister Clara. We toasted to new beginnings, to the wisdom that comes with age, and to the courage to defend what is right regardless of the consequences. And as I raised my glass of wine, I thought of all the women who at that moment were suffering from the mistreatment of their own families, believing they had no options, that they had to endure abuse for the sake of family love. If my story could reach just one of those women and give her the courage to defend herself, then everything I had gone through would have been worth it. Because sometimes the greatest inheritance we can receive is not money or property, but the courage to be true to ourselves and the knowledge that it is never too late to write a new chapter in our lives. It is never too late to choose dignity over convenience, truth over false peace, and self-love over destructive sacrifice, and it is never, ever too late to be free. I then had lunch with my granddaughter Caroline. We met at my house. I was making her favorite cookies. When she arrived, she saw me from the window. She waved at me, and I waved back. She rang the doorbell and gave me a big hug. She gave me a gift, a letter she had been writing to me. "My dear Grandma," she wrote, "I'm so sorry that my mother and father hurt you so much. I didn't know anything about it. I promise I will not be like them. Thank you for showing me what true strength is. Thank you for showing me that it is okay to stand up for yourself. You are my hero." We hugged for a long time, and in that hug, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: genuine hope for the future of our relationship. Caroline stayed for 2 more hours. We walked through my new garden where I showed her the flowers I had planted and the herbs I was growing. We made cookies together, and as we mixed the dough, she told me about school, about her new interests, about the book she was reading. When it was time for her to go, she gave me another tight hug. "Grandma, can I ask you a favor?" "Of course, my love." "Can you keep writing me letters? But now that I know where you live, you can send them directly to me. You can send them to Maria's house, and she'll give them to me." I promised her I would, and I watched her ride away on her bicycle, pedaling with determination toward her complex life, but with a new understanding of the truth. That night, sitting in my garden with a cup of tea in my journal, I wrote, "Today, my granddaughter found me, not the manipulated child I knew before, but a brave young woman who sought out the truth for herself. In her, I see hope that real love can survive lies, that it can endure and grow stronger. I see hope that my granddaughter can find a new life for herself without the manipulation and emotional blackmail she grew up with." I hugged my dog Buster, who was sitting on my lap. I was no longer afraid of the future. I was no longer a victim. I was free. I was ready to start a new life, a life of my own choosing, a life of happiness. I had finally learned that true freedom doesn't come from a lack of responsibility. It comes from the courage to stand up for yourself and those you love. I had finally learned that true love is not a transaction. It is not about giving until it hurts. It is about a mutual respect, a mutual responsibility, and a mutual commitment to each other's well-being. And I had learned that it is never too late to start over. It is never too late to find your voice. It is never too late to be free.